Hello lovelies, a couple of minutes late, my apologies for that. Let's just make sure that everything is working as it should. Am I on screen? Just waiting for Facebook to catch up with me. Sorry about the blank page, I am here. Get your sound on, grab your supplies. And yep, something's happening, good. Okay, let's move a little bit over and get a reasonable view for you. Okay. We're live, it's working. Woohoo! I'm not very ready, can you tell? The time always gets away with me just at the end of the day there, and it's in the back of my mind all day. Okay, so the last couple of sessions have been portrait sessions. So we're not going to have that. Oh, sorry, I've got the sound on. Let's turn that off. That's better, I could hear myself talking. The last couple of sessions have been portrait sessions, so I'm going to change that for today just to make life a little bit more interesting. I love to paint and draw and sketch all kinds of things, but today it felt like a bird, something just light and free. And I'm just grabbing up, I'm using water solubles. I've got Derwent water soluble pencils here, variety of. I'm going to keep the colours fairly subtle, I think. So we've got sort of greys, blues, lavenders there. And these are all water solubles, and I'm working on my journal page, and it has got quite a thick layer of white gesso on it. It doesn't need to be a thick layer, it just happens that I primed this page the last time that I was in my journal, and obviously threw the layer on quite quickly. I think I've probably put it on with a palette knife, which will make the texture. I really like using water solubles on the gesso. I like how they don't sink right into the page. They behave slightly differently because they slide. The gesso creates a seal. So about the rustling, let's just get these out. Some pens here and a bag. Told you I wasn't quite prepared. Okay, so I've also got some Tombow markers, which again are water soluble. I'm going to pull out a couple of just fairly similar colours. There's a blue and a turquoise there. I don't have thousands of these. There's a really lovely soft grey there. So as you can tell, I'm just working towards, despite the mild chaos as I begin, that's a nice neutral as well, just getting myself settled and started a little bit late in the day, despite having been prepared since like 3 hours ago. Something always crops up in between. Let us begin. I'm going to just start with the idea is I would like to draw just a bird in flight. I would kind of like it to be dove-like, but we'll see how that goes. So I'm just going to give myself, this is Stabilo marks also, this is water soluble as well. And I'm just going to give myself some guidelines so that I can sort of set into where it's going to be on my page, because what I don't want to do is kind of start without a plan. I just need to think about where it's going to sit on the page so that I don't kind of get to a point where the wings are going off the edge or whatever. So I'm just thinking about size now. So I think his head's going to be somewhere around there, his or her. And let's give a little bit of a body shape in here. It won't be, I'm saying it's a dove, it won't be particularly accurate because I'm not using a reference image, and I kind of like to, sometimes I use a reference as a guide, but I kind of like for images, my drawings to be a little bit sort of fantastical. So even if I start with an image of a bird as a reference, I tend to find myself kind of going away from that. I think I'd like him to have quite a sort of a floaty kind of a tail there. So I'm just using this because I'm going to, because this will sit on top of the gesso, when I activate it with water, this will just really sort of softly blend in and kind of disappear into the page. I'm just thinking about the angle of that wing here now. And the other one is going to be coming up kind of behind his head, so I guess somewhere there-ish. Just suggesting some feathers there. So I'm just giving myself some guidelines, all of which might change. But it's good to have a little bit of a guide happening there now, and I'm just thinking about just trying to get these wings roughly of a similar size, although they're at different angles, so I don't need to be too accurate. Just flinging that in there. Because of the angle of my phone as I'm doing this, I can't see, and because I couldn't turn the sound off on my laptop, which I used to just check that I was actually broadcasting, I was hitting the sound button to knock the sound off and it wouldn't turn off, so I've just closed the laptop, so I can't see comments. So if you're watching and leaving me comments, my apologies, I'm not ignoring you, I just can't see what's happening out there, but I will come back to you later. So if you have any questions about supplies or anything like that, then please do just leave me a comment or just let me know that you're watching, because right now I can't see. So we've got a little bit, I kind of like the way that the head is coming up there, and let's just angle that wing a little bit. And I know there's a little bit of a bone there on the side of a bird's wing, so we'll just give that a bit more shape there. And of course down here it's going to be a little bit more shaded as it curves in towards the body. Just adding a little bit more. This isn't going to be like my pigment as such, it's going to just wash through as quite grey. I don't mind if the marks show a little bit. I'm sure I've said that before. I like when I'm working in my journal, I quite like leaving the underdrawing there. I very rarely use an eraser. If I get to a point where something really isn't working, it really doesn't look right, I'm more likely to cover it up with gesso kind of later on, rather than get a sort of a very detailed, refined underdrawing going, because I like to build up in layers. It's just the way that I work. I guess we better give this guy some feet. Let's just sort out this head. So if his head is there, I'm going to put a little bit of a beak in about there, eye somewhere around there. Very loose guide. It just gives me a little bit of a feel for where I'm going with this, and definitely going to play a bit more with that lovely fan shape of the tail. So the legs are going to be just tucked up and keep those quite loose. One there and one there, so that I'm just suggesting to myself the way that you know, the knees are bent back in on themselves, and then you've got the little feet there. That's enough of a suggestion to start with. I'm going to get straight in with a brush. That one's a bit small. Let's get a nice big brush and just soften some of this so that I can bring some colour into it. If I just sit up really tall, I can see that there is one person watching, so that's good. There will be a replay available, and this will also be on my YouTube channel when I can get it up there as well. So if you run out of time and it expires in the Facebook group, you can always find it on my YouTube. See how that water is just sitting on the top of the page there, rather than sort of soaking in. So I can really sort of mess those lines and soften them. I don't even have a cloth near me. I'm literally, when I go to wipe that brush off, I'm actually wiping it on my shirt, and I've just realised I'm not actually wearing painty clothes either, so well, I guess it's a painty clothing now because I've just wiped paint on my leg. Never mind. There aren't many clothes that I own that don't have paint of some sort on them, some sort of mark. And I'm a messy eater as well, so if it's got a mark on it, then it's probably got something spilt down the front. So there we go. It's just, life's too short to worry about things like that. just being careful to keep the sort of some of the definitions. The brush is doing some of the work. There's some lovely kind of marks showing up here. I love how because the gesso was laid on quite thickly, and some of it was just kind of slapped on with a palette knife. It was just a bit of gesso that I had left on my palette. So when I prime this page, there is a little bit of texture there, and that's showing up as well. So I've got some nice marks happening there. There's also cat hair in it, which I'm not so keen on having. Let's see if I can get rid of that without making too much mess. That's better. I think there's another one there as well, but it might be just stuck in the gesso, so we'll have to just live with that. And because I'm on a little bit of a slope as well, some of this water might just drip and run, and we might have some drippy things happening as I add a bit more water and colour into, and I'm kind of all right with that. In fact, that might be quite a nice thing to do with the tail as kind of an explosion coming down there. But unusually, I am aiming to keep to quite soft colours. So you heard me say it. We'll see how that goes. If I suddenly get an urge to add fluorescent pink in there, then you know that might happen. But as you can see by what I'm holding in my hand there, my plan is just to really come up with this guy in a lovely, gentle, peaceful, relaxing palette. There's just a lovely freedom to working with your gesso. Got a lovely drip happening there. It's not a fancy watercolour brush. It's just it's actually a brush that I've used for acrylic paints, but it was what was to hand, and using a brush that's a little too big for detailing with is a really great way to start. And I do want to keep the colours subtle, but I would really love to have something while this is drying. I'd really just love to have a little bit of warmth and colour around this guy. So I'm going to use, let's put that handful of pens down, and I'm going to use my Tombow marker. This is like a lavender, so it's still, I'm still thinking cool tones, but I'm going to give just a little bit of a soft background here before I go any further. And I don't want to be, I've said this before with these live sessions, I don't like to be trying to dry things while I'm working. So whilst this is just drying some, it won't be completely dry, but while it's drying a little bit, we'll just work on the background a touch. So you could do this with water-soluble crayons. It doesn't have to be markers, or watercolour paints as well. This is a really lovely way to, watercolour paints are a little bit harder to control, so it's a really lovely way to add pigments with a little bit more control than you might have. And obviously you get sort of a little bit of texture happening there as well, because you're mark making at the same time, and then you can just activate that when you're ready to add some water, which I am. A little bit of water on a slightly smaller brush now, and I'm just going to activate that. What I don't want to do is kind of mess the edges too much, so I'm just going to take it up to the edge, but not right onto that black. So we've just got a bit of interest in the background there. We've got a little bit of a glow happening in the background. Picking up a few little bits of the grey there because I'm working quite fast. This is a less than scintillating part, but if you're playing along, then this will give you time to catch up as well. I know a few people do that when they're watching these. Because it's just in your journal, there's a freedom there. You can just try it, you can play along, you can have some fun and see where you go with it. So go ahead and do that if you know this feels like something that might get you inspired. Be free, free like a bird. And it's almost there. And I might get a little bit of drip just running down there because, as I said, I've got this is tilted at a slight angle because it makes it a lot easier for me to see what I'm doing whilst videoing as well. It's always a trick between getting a decent camera angle for the lives, and getting the page at a decent angle that I can work at as well. So we're somewhere in between the two today. Okay, let's have a look. Let's just see where I'm going to go with. Let's get some colour laid on now. Let's start with the slightly darker tones. I'm really loving the blues. Let's have a little bit of shadow in on some of these feathers. We're going to start with just a few little soft lines, being mindful that I don't want to add like tons of pigment because I'm trying to be subtle. And subtle is not my middle name. So if you know my work, you know I love to use colour. There's always an excuse to throw in some fluorescent pink on things. So just a little bit of shadowing there as the tail kind of goes in towards the body. And I'm going to add a little bit of shadow sort of just into the chest there. So I've drawn this in kind of black and grey. In my mind, it's actually almost a white bird. So the colours that I'm adding in now are my sort of shadow tones. That's what's in my mind. That may not be what happens, how this all works out on the page. But we will see. That one's a little bit too bold. Let's have a little bit of warmth in there to add a bit more before I activate these. This is lovely. It's a really neutral 942. I don't think they name their colours on the Tombos. I think it's all just done by numbers. That 942, I really like this. It looks like the most boring colour ever, but that tint is just absolutely gorgeous. It's just like a warm, very soft, subtle beige tone, and that just brings some life into those feathers. I can't wait to get some water on this again now, just to see where that takes me. A little around the eye there. And they kind of activate each other because they're on top of gesso as well. When it's just on unprimed paper, they're a little bit harder to move. But I really like that movement. I've lost the feet, but I'm going to come back in and put them back, because you can do things like that when you're making art. That's the magic of it. And as I say, this is all about having fun in your art journal. It doesn't need to be anything perfect. In fact, the imperfection is what makes, I think, journal pages so interesting. I'm never completely at home with a new journal, although I love that excitement of kind of getting a new book and opening up and having all these blank pages of potential. I'm just on a spare bit of paper just off to the side there. I'm just rubbing the some of the pigment out of this because I've been mixing with blue and with that black as well. So you can see it's just, I was just using another piece of paper just to rub that out, just to get that off there so that the pigment stays good in that that lovely kind of beige tone. This one is pretty strong, so I'm going to be quite light with it, but again, it's gorgeous. It's like a jade turquoise. That's 373 if anyone is interested. As I said, I don't have tons of these Tombow markers. They are, the price being the prohibitive thing about them, but they are gorgeous, and every time I use them it makes me want to have more. But you know, you only need maybe 4 or 5. They're a really great tool in your sort of mixed media arsenal. They have a quality about them. I've had these a long time. They do last really well, but they have a really lovely quality about them as the way that the pigments work. They're really clean, and I don't want that brush. Where's my bigger brush? Okay. The pigments seem to be really pure And as I say, I really love the way they kind of, when you work with them over gesso, they just kind of, as you activate, they just kind of float. So it has gone into the gesso a little bit there, so you can see my marks, but see how they mix. So much more control than you have when working with watercolour paints. There's still an element of freedom there, because they're going to mix as I activate them. These colours are going to mix together and do their thing, but I just feel like I've got a little bit more control. Bit of shade down here, activating that. I'm just going to kind of flick the pigments down, because that tail is just going to be a big exploding fan of feathers there. I think we need to be a little darker. Okay, I'm going to go back to my, Stabilo, and just darken some of that a little bit more, because that underside of his belly just needs a little more hint of shadow there. I found some tissue so I can wipe my brush off, so it's not going on my clothes for now till I forget. The edge of the wing there, which is, it's again, just looking at this, it's actually quite bony on that edge, so I'm going to take a little bit of the colour out of there, and then we'll bring some shadow in next to it and just flick those feathers outwards. So they're not really feathers at this point, they're just a suggestion of. Let's just activate that little bit there around the eye. Love that mix of the jade and the darker blue. I have to be careful here because I am going to work wet in wet. This is, sorry, I'm so distracted by how lovely that felt as I was just putting it over the wet that I forgot to carry on talking. This is blue grey, Derwent watercolour pencil in blue grey, and I'm working over the wet, and it's staying wet for longer than it would if my page was unprimed, because I'm working over gesso, that bottom layer. The water is really sitting on the top there, so the pigment in the pencil is activating just as I'm putting it on there, which is lovely because it's picking up some of the textures of the gesso where it's not activated, and then it's just blending with those other colours where it is sort of activating on the wetter patches. So that's why I forgot to talk, because I was just looking at that thinking, wow, that's such a lovely texture. Obviously I hope that these lovely things are going to happen when I do the lives, but sometimes they don't, and when you're mixing supplies up, even if you've done it 100 times before, they don't always do what you hope or what you expect them to do. So that was a really happy result, and I was enjoying that, and hoping that it was showing up on camera as well. So these edges here that are going into the lavender, you can see the pigment just from the pencil. You've got these lovely sort of scratchy pencil marks. But as I come sort of into where there's still water sitting on the surface there, those colours are blending together. I really want to get a sort of an edge to that wing as that goes up into a feather there. That's better. Let's bring in, this is, it's a bronze, which is lovely and subtle as well. That's what made me pick out the Tombow as well, and that lovely beige, because they're quite close in pigment. So far I managed to stick with the whole sort of subtle hues. Twilight tones, aren't they? The blues and sort of a hint of warm brown there. I might activate some of this. I may just leave the pencil marks almost as they are. We'll see how that feels. Whilst I'm here, it'd be a good idea to just get the feet back, which I completely obliterated when I put that water in. So we just kind of the leg coming up there, and then it's bending because their legs bend backwards, where ours bend forwards. It's just kind of thinking about that, but it's going to be tucked right up in, and then the claws just tucking over there. This is one of those points where you might want to use a reference rather than just guess it. I was going to say wing it then, but that would have been a really bad joke. A little bit more of that blue grey. I'm really liking that. These are really quite cool colours to compared to what I normally use. I usually I like sort of yellow tones and a lot of pink. But this is they're very soothing shades, which was the vibe of the afternoon for me. It's lunchtime for many of you, coming into the evening here in the UK. A beautiful spring evening as well. Really gorgeous. We've been lucky, blessed with some wonderful weather the past few days. The typical Brit, just talking about the weather. We do that a lot. Mostly because it's so unpredictable here. We get 3 days of sunshine and everyone walks around with a sunburn because we all rush out into it. Because we're afraid that it might be gone next week. It usually is. And we won't see any more for weeks. It's not the healthiest way to be. I try not to do that anymore. I used to be a lot more of a sun worshipper. I like that explosion of feathers on the tail. I'm enjoying that. Let's get a little bit more of that blue on here. So I did say that these are quite cool colours compared to my usual sort of palette choices. But I feel like there needs to be a little more warmth. I'm going back with that that shade of jade, just bringing a little bit more. It's a slightly warmer blue, but without being too heavy. So I will activate these bits so that they blend. And then I think probably, I don't need all of the other colours, I think probably a normal standard pencil might be the best way to pull in some details on this. I'm just making sure on my hand that the brush is not too wet. And then to put details in like the eye and a lot of water there. Just get rid of that. It's going to drip a little bit, but we'll let the drips happen. Let's just go with it. I like how that jade has just warmed that blue tone a little bit more. Still needs a little more warmth, so I'm going to go against what I said and I'm going to bring in some yellow. I just can't do those tones that are too cold. This is 025 and it's just going to be like a few little touches. I want a little around the wing, maybe a little above the eye. Let's have a little yellow tones on those legs as well. And because it's here, it just needs to unify and show up in a couple of other places as well. So let's bring just a few touches of yellow into the wings, definitely on the tail. I think that can be a little bit more wild and free with it there, and a few touches just on these upper feathers. I'm going to just put a little bit of yellow up there and then activate that, and I'm just going to use the edge of this. There's no gesso on this top bit, so the pigment soaks right into the paper, and just so that I don't leave it with loads of blue pigment sitting on the lovely tip there. There we go. I'm just cleaning it off in that top corner. As I say, I'm working on the journal, so I'm not precious about it. Just activating that yellow and bringing it through. It warms it slightly. It's that's a cadmium kind of yellow, so it's almost sort of egg yolky. It's got that lovely strength to it. Just bringing that in super lightly. It helps to define the beak as well. And those legs, which I'm not going to do too much with my brush loose. Let's get that big brush again for that splash of tail feathers. It's not really, I mentioned a dove, I think, at the start, which was sort of on my mind. I think it was the idea of peace and tranquility, but we've gone a long way away from that. And that's fine too, I'm good with that. It can be whatever you want it to be. Just bugs me seeing those scribbly lines there, so I'm going to just push that yellow into the corner so that my page isn't kind of messed up with that. That's just a thing, that's just me. All right, let's grab a standard black pencil now. So this is not a water soluble pencil. The Marxol is water soluble, but we'll keep that to one side. This is just a standard. This is a Faber-Castell Polychromo pencil, and that is just for a few sort of final details. I don't want to get caught up. I've still got a glob of water sitting on the page there. I'm just going to take that off. A few little edges. It's sliding slightly, even though they're not water soluble, it's sliding slightly where I've got a lot of wet patches here, but that's fine. Just define his back a little bit more with black. Broken marks, I don't want a line all around it, but just a few definitions to give that kind of feathery effect there. Just stop myself getting too carried away, because it's not really about defining every single feather, and you can be as detailed as you like, but I want this to be sort of that idea of being in flight, so having movement there and a sense of peace and freedom, and the sort of the flow, that sort of whoosh of feathers. How do you paint a whoosh? That's I hope that makes sense. I don't know how else to say it. But it's just capturing the idea of movement, so keeping it loose and scribbly and not too heavily defined, because this is a journal page, so I'm just here to play and have fun. You know, if I'm going to teach a full in-depth lesson, that's a whole other thing, which I do, if that's of interest to anybody. I have a website full of much more intense, less playful, I suppose, lessons. They're still playful, they're still fun, but much more refined classes. And there are freebies there as well. If anybody's here who hasn't seen any of those, let me know, and I will post you a link to some some free samples. I'm in the process of moving my classes over to a slightly better host, so be able to test out my shiny new website very soon. So this is why a pencil seemed like a good idea, because I haven't spent ages kind of putting in every little tiny detail, but we don't want just a suggestion of there being clawed feet tucked up there. Now this tail, it whooshes beautifully, so I'm not going to go too much around the feathers. I kind of don't want them to end, I want them to just be sort of swooshing. I'm literally trying to paint a swoosh or draw a swoosh. Think about how that body would sort of come down, a little bit more shape, wouldn't it, rather than just a round circle, and then down into the tail. And if you, there are literally hundreds of birds in flight references there. I've drawn and painted many birds, so there's a lot of kind of guesswork, and you know, probably the experience of doing them previously, obviously that's feeding into the way that I'm putting this together here. But there's nothing wrong with referring to a reference. Just make it your own as well. Maybe switch up the colours. There's a nice bit of movement happening there, so I'm not going to do too much more. I'm just searching for one of these. Has got to work. I don't know which one. There's a Posca pen there, which they're notorious for getting stage fright when I try and use them on a live. Let's see if I can get this one to. Oh, it's got ink in it. Let's see what happens. So just a few little highlights here now. Let's give a little bit of white to the top edge of this wing. Not hard lines, so I'll just push that in with my finger. A few of these feathers can have a touch more definition, but again, I want it soft really. I'm pushing it, kind of putting it in there squibbly, and then just softening it with my finger as well. Let's have a little, maybe a little bit of a highlight there. The tail is going to cause me confusion now, because I really like what's happening there, but it's just a touch too dark. So this is just a Posca and acrylic marker pen in white. You could do this with acrylic paint, even a gel pen. I have got a gel pen in my hand in case I want to make any very small white marks. These gel pens also are notorious for getting stage fright when I'm alive, so we'll see how that works in a moment. I haven't used it for a little while, so it may not want to play. She found a box of supplies which I'd packed up to take with me somewhere, because you can't go anywhere without a box of supplies in a sketchbook, obviously. But they'd been sat there for a while, so I've pulled these out so that they don't spoil. Really, you know, if you leave things that are sort of partly used for too long, they can dry up, which can be quite upsetting if you've got a whole batch of lovely supplies like this. So I'm happy that they are still working, because they were sitting in my car for a while, so they've got a little bit hot. So go Posca pen. I'm quite impressed that it's still working. A little bit of a highlight on the top of the head there, but I like the dark definition behind it, so just keep that loose. To the beak. Just softening those lines with my finger. So it looks like I'm putting it on and taking it off, but it is doing something, I promise. Just get these looking a little more feathery. Really lovely free way to work. I need I need a lovely quote, really, or an affirmation about flight or freedom or something, which would sit beautifully on this page. So I might add that. I might have to go and find something and add that on a little later. I don't want to define these feet too much because I've kept them just a suggestion of. I really love these kind of, the way this tail is just exploding down. It's not defined. I really like the movement in that. It's kind of what I hoped for, but what you hope for and what you achieve isn't always the same thing. Oh look, even the gel pen's going to perform. How amazing. Tiny little dot in the eye. Just to put some life there. I'm going to have a little accent white just over it as well. And then I think, oh, it's given up. Yeah, it's stopped. Okay. And that's probably okay because I think I'm probably ready to just call that page done. I hope it inspires you. I hope you just come and play and enjoy that freedom of flight. I'm going to go and find myself a little quote and add it on there, and I'll take a photo and post it in comments when I've written that in afterwards. Thank you so much for joining me. I will come back to you if anybody's left me any comments. I will catch up with you. If you watch on the replay, leave me a comment, #replay or something along those lines. And if you have a go, if you get inspired or anything else that you want to share in the group here, I love to see your creative projects. And if you've enjoyed it and you know someone else who might enjoy this as well, invite them to the group or to my YouTube or wherever. And spread the love and sign up to my email list as well, because there's all kinds of freebie classes and special offers that come up there for subscribers. Have an amazing rest of your day, whatever time it is. For me, it's coming up for dinner time. I know for a lot of you, the day is only halfway through. So I will wish you a goodbye. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you soon. Bye.